One of the many tropes of the horror genre is the classic non-believer. Regardless of what advice or warnings other characters have given them, there are these horror figures who simply refuse to pay attention to what they're being told. And it's not just the crazy sorts who bang the warning drum, mind, for we've seen time and time again how even smart, calm figures are completely ignored when trying to give others a heads up that maybe they should tweak their plans. Whether it's a cocksure arrogance or dismissing words of wisdom as merely insane ramblings, many a horror character has come undone, see brutally murdered, for not heeding the warning that was handed out to them. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are 10 horror movie characters punished for not believing. Number 10. Sheriff Brackett. Halloween. Sure, Donald Pleasance's Sam Loomis was forever an erratic, intense, shrieking presence. But if Lee Brackett had listened to Dr. Loomis earlier in 1978's Halloween, he may have had a chance to save his dear daughter Annie. When confronted by a frantic Loomis who informs him an escaped murderer is on his way to Haddonfield on Halloween night, Sheriff Brackett is understandably a little dubious to listen to someone who's coming across as utterly nuts himself. For Brackett, he throws out lines like, "I have a feeling that you're way off on this. Well, it's gonna take a lot more than fancy talk to keep me up all night crawling around these bushes. Every kid in Haddonfield thinks this place is haunted, and generally thinks that Sam Loomis is nothing but a scared old man who might be a few sandwiches short of a picnic." To be fair, that description of Loomis is correct, but it's also with good reason, and that reason, of course, is Michael Myers. By the time Sheriff Brackett finally starts believing Dr. Loomis, his own daughter Annie has already been slaughtered by the Shape. Number 9. Daniel Ray. Paranormal Activity 2. Following in the footsteps of Paranormal Activity's Micah being a total asshat, Paranormal Activity 2 brought the equally dickheadish Daniel Ray into the fray. Whereas Micah goaded the demonic presence of that first film, Daniel spends the majority of his time simply refusing to believe that something evil is lurking in the shadows. So much of a non-believer is Daniel, he fires his family's housekeeper when she burns sage after sensing that nefarious spirits are in the house. Of course, Daniel's wife Christy, the sister of the previous movie's Katie, is furious at him for doing this, for she also believes that their abode is haunted. Even though Daniel is privy to his wife's conversations with Katie about how they were troubled by a demon as kids, and even though his infant son Hunter could be at risk, Brian Boland's character plays down any threat. As Paranormal Activity 2 heads towards its final act, Daniel realizes he done messed up, hires his housekeeper again, gets an exorcism carried out, and even tries to pass the demon from Christy to Katie. This plan actually works, but spectacularly backfires as a possessed Katie breaks into the house and kills both Daniel and Christy the night after she'd killed Micah in the first PA picture. Number 8. Cotton Marcus. The Last Exorcism. For The Last Exorcism's Cotton Marcus, belief is something he struggles to have in regards to several things. This reverend lost his faith in religion after his son was born ill, and since then he's made a career from carrying out sham exorcisms on people who claim to be possessed but actually aren't. But when Father Marcus comes across the case of Nell Sweetser, he's in for a rude awakening. After Nell's father contacts Marcus with concerns that his daughter is possessed and has slaughtered his livestock, Cotton and a documentary film crew head out to the Sweetser farm to showcase how the pregnant Nell's issues are psychological or fabricated, rather than the result of possession. As The Last Exorcism progresses, it's revealed that Nell is indeed plagued by a demon, and the majority of her local town are involved in a cult, which results in Ashley Bell's character giving birth to some inhuman creature in order to please them. By the time Father Marcus realizes this though, it's too late, with him swarmed by this cult while he begs for assistance from a god he has long stopped believing in. Number 7. Sheriff Eben Olsen. 30 Days of Night. To be fair to Josh Hartnett's 30 Days of Night character, you have to question how much of a difference it would have made if he'd taken the rambling warning of Ben Foster's unnamed stranger seriously. Foster's mysterious figure starts that movie by walking into the cold, snowy town of Barrow, Alaska, and erratically warbling on about a danger being on the way. Presuming that he's just some utter loon, Hartnett's Sheriff Olsen locks the fella up in a holding cell, then continues to get ready for the town's annual 30-day run of consistent darkness. Unfortunately, what this nutcase is harping on about is the bloodthirsty gang of vampires that are soon to arrive in Barrow to feast on the townsfolk. Unbeknownst to Olsen, this stranger has already sabotaged the town's communications and transport, meaning its inhabitants are juicy, meaty sitting ducks for a swarm of vamps. Could things have played out differently for Sheriff Olsen if he'd taken the ramblings of a crazy man seriously? Maybe, maybe not. As it went, Eben Olsen does manage to save his town. The problem is, to do so he had to turn himself into a vampire, with him then turning to dust once the sun finally shone down on Barrow once again. Number 6. Tatum Riley, Scream. Tatum. The feisty, ferocious, smartass best pal of Sydney Prescott, Rose McGowan's Tatum Riley is memorably killed in the most unique of ways in Wes Craven's Scream. That is, Tatum's neck is broken by an electric garage door after she got herself wedged in a cat flap. Why did Tatum end up trying to burst through a cat flap? Why, that's because she was desperately trying to evade the clutches of Ghostface. Of all the kills across the Scream franchise, Tatum is one of the few victims to actually have an in-person face-to-face conversation with Ghostface before she meets her demise. And to be fair, it's a very jovial, cheery conversation, with the youngest Riley sibling poking fun at her would-be killer. That's where the problem lies, for Tatum didn't actually believe she was confronted with the real Ghostface killer, who had by that point already killed 2 of her classmates and Principal Himbry. Instead, Rose McGowan's character thought film nerd Randy had decked himself out in the Ghostface garb as part of a prank. For Tatum, she would have been far better positioned to survive, or, at least not have to make a run for it through a cat flap, if she'd have believed the Ghostface was, well, Ghostface. Number 5. Sheriff Garris, Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. A little similar to the case of Sheriff Bracken in Halloween, David Kagan's Sheriff Mike Garris refuses to acknowledge the words being spouted by a purported crazy person. In this instance, that crazy person is Tommy Jarvis, who's been released from a mental institution following the bizarre events of the prior 2 movies. This time, Tommy's quest to make sure Jason Voorhees is truly dead ends in him accidentally reanimating Jason's corpse. Realizing his error, Jarvis rushes to the sheriff's office to warn the town of Forest Green, the new name given to Crystal Lake, that Jason is back. Upon hearing Tommy's ramblings, Sheriff Garris locks him up in the local jail and thinks that Jarvis is hallucinating. Tommy's then escorted to the edge of town where he's threatened that his balls will be worn as earrings should he return. Of course, Tommy would indeed return, but by this point, a bunch of pretty young things have been butchered. It's only then that Sheriff Garris comes face to face with the very real Jason Voorhees, who promptly kills him and 2 other lawmen. Number 4. The AMD Town Council, Jaws 2. One bloody brutal summer of a shark stalking the shores of Amity Island should be enough to have anyone and everyone on their toes at the mere whiff of an unwanted underwater presence. Unfortunately, the idiots on the Amity Town Council refused to believe that there could ever be another shark attack in the history of Amity, and thus the body count of Jaws 2 was unnecessarily added to. The 1978 sequel offering opened up with a 25-foot great white shark killing a couple of scuba divers, a water skier, a boat driver, and then is alluded to have brutalized a killer white. Having already been through similar terrors, Chief Martin Brody knows a shark problem when he sees one. The thing is, his pleas to Mayor Larry Vaughn and the Amity Town Council fall on deaf ears. Not only do Vaughn and his cronies refuse to believe Amity could be in the midst of more shark trouble, even though Brody presents them with plentiful evidence, but they actually vote to have Martin removed as the chief of police. A further 3 deaths would happen, a bunch of youngsters would be left emotionally scarred, and the reputation of Amity and its beaches took yet another major hit. All because of the Amity Town Council. Number 3. Everyone. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 2003. The opening moments of Marcus Nispel's 2003 The Texas Chainsaw Massacre see an utterly traumatized young woman warning our central protagonist that their deaths are on the horizon. Having passed this shook-up girl on the side of the road, our main crew of characters pull up and offer to give her a ride to wherever she needs to go. This troubled sort indicates how her friends and or family are all dead dead, talks about a bad man, then has a major freakout when she realizes the direction the group are heading. In a jarring moment, rather than go in the direction that the van is traveling, this unnamed woman pulls a gun out from under her dress and takes her own life. Of course, by the time the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake rolls to a close, all but one of this group, Jessica Biel's Aaron, have been brutally murdered by Leatherface and his family. Number 2. Dean Allen Halsey, Reanimator. For Dean Halsey in Reanimator, he was thoroughly bitten in the backside by his doubting of Herbert West's genius mind. Jeffrey Combs' West already has one reanimation under his belt by the time he rocks up at Miskatonic University, where Allen Halsey is Dean, and he's soon at work on further experimentations designed to bring the dead back into the land of the living. When fellow medical student Dan witnesses West bringing his cat Rufus back from the dead, he excitedly tells the Dean about this news. However, the Dean completely dismisses the possibility that Herbert West could somehow reanimate a corpse, be it human or animal. So angered by Dan's insistence, Dean Halsey bars both Dan and Herbert from the school. That doesn't stop the duo from breaking in and testing West's formula out on a dead human mind. And when Halsey discovers the pair, he himself is killed by a reanimated corpse, then brought back himself by West and his reagent. The zombified Halsey is locked up in a padded cell for observation, lobotomized, and then becomes a tool of the nefarious Dr. Hill. Number 1. Emma, Trick or Treat. Michael Dougherty's Trick or Treat is one of the all-time great horror anthologies. Before Trick or Treat dives into its 4 main Halloween-themed short tales, it introduces us to the fictional town of Warren Valley, Ohio, and sets the stall for what's to come. To set said stall, which is all about being sure to follow the rules of Halloween, Emma ends up mutilated and turned into a jack-o'-lantern of sorts. In an opening few minutes designed to show the consequences of not following the rules or believing in the traditions of Samhain, Emma is punished for taking down her Halloween decorations before the night is over. Attacked by an unseen force, which would be revealed to be uber-cute, uber-naughty Sam, Emma is murdered and her disfigured face left for her husband to find amongst the remaining Halloween decorations.